Hi, welcome to Down to Earth Gardening. I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about myself and to let you know exactly what this channel is all about.
So as you can see, we're up on the hillside, which is 5 kilometres away from the nearest town of Porto-Vecchio. We're located in south of France, on a small island called Corsica in the middle of the Mediterranean. This is the aerial view of the place, in which we're set on just under a quarter of an acre. So here we have plot 1 of 2, and this essentially will be our herb garden, producing mainly mints, some basil and a few salad greens. We'll predominantly be selling to bars and restaurants in the local area. However, we'll also do a weekly farmers market in the summer. So I've started off here with a plot that is completely barren, plenty of rocks in there, and has never been used for any kind of cultivation prior. So the 3 tools that I'm using are essentially the wheelbarrow, a spade and a pitchfork. So before starting any of the plot preparation or groundworks, it's always important to look at the sunlight exposure across the plot, as well as where the shade's going to be throughout the course of the day. As we all know, the different crops have different sunlight requirements, some needing partial shade, some needing full sun, and therefore to allocate the beds correctly, it's always good to take this into account. So what I did here essentially is I've drawn 3 lines. The yellow line is where the shade will be in the afternoon during the winter, and then some estimates from red to orange throughout the course of the seasons. So after conducting the sunlight exposure analysis, I was able to allocate specific beds to specific crops. For example, beds 5, 6 and 7 on the far right, I've decided to put in tomatoes. This is because there's a high sunlight exposure throughout the course of the season and has full sun. Beds 4, 3 and 2 have afternoon shade, and therefore leafy greens such as lettuces will be perfect in this location. Bed 1, as well as the raised bed, will be used predominantly for basil and also in the winter months some spinach. Raised bed 2 and 3 will have mint and strawberries. So now that we've designed the layout of the plot and allocated the specific beds, it was really time to start doing the plot preparation works. All I'm doing here is taking a spade to create the channels that run down the side of the beds. As I didn't want to bring in too much compost, this was a great way to build up the soil in the beds, but also to create a channel for excess water to run off. Other advantages of doing this are improved oxygen levels in the soil for better root health, as well as a more defined perimeter of the beds themselves. So bed preparation essentially is a 5-step process. Step 1, creating channels and defining the perimeter of the beds. Step 2, removing unwanted debris such as weeds and stones. Step 3, a light watering followed by covering with a tarpaulin. In a month's time I will do step 4, which will be adding soil amendments such as compost and fertiliser, followed by step 5, which will be preparing the beds for planting out. Depending on your context, usually the 5 steps will take no more than an hour per bed. However, for myself, due to the large quantity of stones that I found in the soil, step 2 was highly time consuming. I probably spent an hour per bed just on step 2 clearing away the stones. And as you can see here, I'm literally just taking any stones out as I'm skimming through the bed, anything above the size of a golf ball. There is no science to this process, and literally just digging your hands in just to rummage through and find the bigger stones. Spending an hour or so at the start of each season can be seen as a continual improvement programme and gradually improve the consistency of your yields as well as the quality of the soil. Comparison of the two beds here. The one on the right has been skimmed and most of the stones taken out, or at least the larger ones, and the bed in the middle or on the left hand side, this one's actually had no work done to it yet. So as you can see, they've both got quite a nice form, however, you know, a lot of clearing of stones yet to be done. So at the start of the week I directly sowed some spinach into one of the raised beds, and all I'm doing here is using some old PVC irrigation piping to create a low tunnel, and this is really just to keep the birds out until the plants are established. Low tunnels are pretty cheap online, however I did have this stuff knocking about and wanted to make the most of it. So to finish off the bed preparations this week, I'm back on the tomato beds. All I'm doing is using a pitchfork to break up the compact soil. The compact soil is often referred to as a hard pan, and for crops such as tomatoes and peppers that need to get down into the subsoil, hard pan can create many issues for those root systems. So all I'm doing is breaking up the hard pan with the pitchfork by digging it in to about a foot and a half down. I'll then cover with water, followed by putting over the tarpaulin. This will give plenty of time for this hard pan to start breaking down itself before planting out in a couple of months' time. So to finish off the week, I'm germinating the basil seeds, in which will get transplanted out into the garden around the middle of March. Unfortunately, I left the starter trays at the previous property, and in the meantime I'm just going to use some materials found around the house to make a starter tray. I found this cardboard box and thought would be perfect as a little experiment to see how it'll hold up. Hopefully it'll last the 10 to 15 days of the germination before going into pots. This will be a great way to reuse the materials we have lying around, and maybe will be something I'll do again in the future.
So there we have it, guys. That was week 1 of the new year. I hope you found value in that, and if you do have any comments, please leave them below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you next week.